Welcome to Medical Myths, Legends, and Fairy Tales. I'm your host, Dr. Alan Christensen. Look, you know that between the latest online fads and the crazy media headlines, it's easier than ever to get confused about your health. And you and I just want to feel better and live longer. We want to know what works. And we can't wait for further studies. We need to make decisions today based on the best evidence we've got. Well, that's exactly what this show is here for. So let's get to it.
Hi there, this is Dr. Linda Kashaba from Integrative Health. Would you like some help with your thyroid? We would absolutely love to help you out. And guess what? We can even do remote care. Please call us today at 480-657-0003 to set up your first appointment. If you mention code podcast20, you will get 20% off from your first visit. That phone number again is 480-657-0003, and the code is podcast20. Can't wait to meet you.
Hey, Dr. C here with you. Welcome to another episode of Medical Myths, Legends, and Fairy Tales. So this is going to be cool. The Mediterranean diet has just tons and tons of good research on it, but there are a lot of misconceptions, a lot of false ideas about this diet. And I thought, who better to help us out than Dr. Stephen Masley? So one of my dearest friends, he's a physician, nutritionist, author, trained chef, sailboat captain, ski instructor, all kinds of things. He's made the #1 all-time health program for PBS, 30 Days to a Younger Heart, and affiliated with the American Heart Association, American College of Nutrition. So lots of great accolades, lots of really great books out. The most recent one is The Mediterranean Method. So Dr. Masley is going to talk to us about some of the misconceptions and also some of the things that he picked up on his last sailing adventure all throughout Europe, which we got to join him on. A lot of fun. So enjoy the time here with Dr. Stephen Masley. Stephen, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, and I'm delighted to get the chance to talk with you today.
So this is just incredibly cool. Now, the Mediterranean diet, I've been a fan of this for so long. The depth of the data is really strong, and there's some misconceptions people have about it, and also just a lot of fundamental ideas that aren't conveyed that well. And I can't think of at all a better person to tell us about this than you. So this is going to be cool.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of information that we know that the Mediterranean diet, if it's followed, can help you lose weight, reduce your risk for heart disease and memory loss. And Spain, who follows it the most closely, just became the longest lived country on the planet. They just passed Japan.
Oh, wow.
So that's actually recent news.
That's awesome. Wow. I'll have to take a peek at that. I've not even seen that just yet. So one big myth to start out with. I want to talk about a couple of myths, then get into some of the substance. And this is surrounding the release of a book, which I'm excited to talk to people about, The Mediterranean Method. This is going to be aired just before that book comes out. So we'll talk a bit more about that. One big myth people have, I think, is that, they take whatever their diet is and they wash their food down with wine. They pour olive oil on their cornflakes, as I heard you say, and they think that's Mediterranean. But it's a comprehensive thing. So give us more context about this, please.
Well, the Mediterranean diet is very varied. It includes cuisine from Spain, France, Italy, Greece, Turkey, North Africa, the Middle East. I mean, there's so many endless possibilities. But what they have as a theme is that their meals are especially focused on plant foods and vegetables, fruits, beans, nuts, especially fresh, local, in-season plant food that they've gone to the store and bought within the last couple days. So eating fresh fruit and vegetables, I think is really a key. Yes, adding olive oil has an added benefit, but no, you can't just add olive oil to your food and call it Mediterranean. It really includes, you need to eat that whole package of vegetable, fruit, beans, and nuts. Add some olive oil. Absolutely. That's the fat you use most often. And lots of spices and herbs to make your food taste good and for the anti-inflammatory effect. That's what really makes something a Mediterranean diet.
And help us get some context on how this came on the radar. How did we first become aware of this, and what were the historical periods in which this showed its real effects?
Well, back in the 1970s, I think it its popularity soared when Dr. Keyes did his famous 7-country study. I mean, in the end, it's kind of unfortunate that he was the one who started this because a lot of his data was not well collected, and it was how do you say this politely? He tricked us. You know, he changed his data. He did all sorts of things to distort the outcomings. But from that, the Mediterranean diet got a ton of his, people looking at it and studying it. And since that time, it's been studied, through the 80s and 90s up into the last 20 years. And we have over 100 studies showing multiple health benefits from following a Mediterranean diet. And, for 2019, the U.S. News and World Report appropriately called it the #1 diet on the planet.
That wasn't the first time. It's always been in the top couple, right? Or at least for some time.
You're right, Ellen. It's always been in the top couple. And it's, I think, hit first before, but it was first in 2019. And there's a solid chance it's going to repeat again in 2020. And we'll find that out here in just a few weeks.
Well, it's an interesting thing because the reason that it's given such regard is because the number of people and the number of years that have been looked at to go into it. And at this point, I don't really see how that could be unseated. We don't really have, and it wouldn't really seem ethical to make differing recommendations when we just know so much more about this.
Well, and I mean, so they're looking at what are the health benefits for your heart, for memory loss, for weight control. If you only look at 1 year weight loss outcomes, the Mediterranean diet is probably one of the best weight loss diet because, a lot of them, as you know, are based on 6, maybe 12 weeks, shorter outcomes. But here's the biggest advantage of the Mediterranean diet. It's easy to follow. You don't have to give up huge major classes of food groups. And the food's delicious. And most people are happy to follow it long term.
And one thing to throw out too, some of the earliest work that Dr. Keyes saw, I believe, was the effects on some of the Greek farmers and their health around World War II, just before or just after. And it was a period of time in which it was the diet of the poor. It was the diet of the commoners that didn't have a lot of food options. So one thing too, I'd like people to have in context and love your feedback on this is that, the amounts of food are always relevant, and it's easy to think about any food being good or bad and not think about the overall quantity of that and not have it be helpful. So what are your thoughts about how just food quantity ties into this?
Well, portion controls do matter. We don't want to pour on, cups or even half cups of olive oil on things. We don't want to overdo, grains. I think, people, the Mediterranean diet includes whole grains, but it's in a much smaller portion than we traditionally eat here. I don't think you have to worry about overdoing your portions of vegetables or fruits or spices. When they do eat animal protein, it's a much smaller portion size. We're talking 3, 4, maximum 5 ounces. They certainly don't have 8, 12, 16-ounce steaks that they serve. So their portions are pretty modest for, what we would think of as the richer food. And their portions are really quite large for vegetable, fruit, beans, and nuts.
And some context, I think, is just so important for the listeners. So last year was this last spring through fall. Now, that was the second or the third time that you and Nicole had been out sailing in the Mediterranean on the boat.
Yeah, second time. Second summer in a row. We spent 7 months this last summer sailing in the Mediterranean.
So Kieran and I got to join you for about a week. Ryan was there, and it was just the most incredible experience. So listeners, you need to know that Stephen and his wife, just awesome couple. So he's also a classically trained chef. And we were hitting all these ports along the Amalfi Coast, just wherever looked like fun, and we'd go and just hit the local markets. Get some seafood, get some produce, and take that to the boat and cook that up and see the sights. And what I experienced was a very small snapshot of what he was doing, but yeah, he really got to see just firsthand how people are living and how this is working out. And before we got on, I was asking about just how well you think people are still following this. And I guess there's problems with the younger generations, but overall you said that many are still following traditional diets pretty well.
Especially when you look at smaller towns and more rural areas and you go to the market, and that's about all there is in the market. I mean, vegetable, fruit, beans, and nuts, some clean protein. They do eat dairy. They have some, they probiotic rich yogurt and cheese, and they have red wine and um, oodles of spices and herbs. I mean, that's the predominant what's being there. And if you go to these smaller ma and pa restaurants, that's by far most of the food they still serve. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't have fast food restaurants. They do, especially in the cities. And the younger you are, especially the under 2025 crowd, seems to really in Europe be shifting and eating more American style processed food, fast food. It's pretty sad. So yeah, your observation is pretty true, and it's unfortunate. But still, I would say most people in Europe are following a more traditional Mediterranean lifestyle, and that's why they have the longest lifespans on the planet. I mean, Spain is at top, and Italy's close behind, so is France. Even Greece, with their economic, collapse, they still live over 5 years longer than we do in the U.S., and they have much better
Wow.
health at the end of their life as well. So there's a lot to be said for even though they're not following it completely, it's still having a big benefit.
And there's also a greater context about just the nature of life and the pace of life. So what are some other elements behind the health differences, you think?
Well, you and I have talked about this. It's the food, but there's some other real benefits. And for one, how do they eat? When we look at, a typical meal, when we go out to a restaurant in Europe, we almost never eat in less than 90 minutes. It's leisurely. You're talking, frequently you're outside talking with people, friends, family. It's joyous. It's leisurely. You're not rushing. If you are in a hurry, you can't go. I mean, and then when you think you're really done at the end, they usually bring you like free fruit, for dessert. So you're like ready to pay your bill. And then that's the sign when you ask for the bill, then they bring you like a plate of fruit and you're there for another 20 minutes.
I'm
So,
thinking about our ostrich meal, one of the last few nights there.
yeah.
Do you remember the ostrich episode? It was ostrich. That's right. It was oyster. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that was the word it sounded most like.
Mm-hmm.
And we were guessing and trying to do charades with our server. And finally, we all figured out that it wasn't ostrich. It was oyster was the item. And but that was quite a paced, casual, classic example of what you're describing.
And then, they are outside and they're with nature more. And, they walk it, their parks are loaded. And in the evening after dinner, they're out walking. They're not sitting at home, on a screen, either a TV screen or a computer screen or even yes, they walk with their smartphones. I won't say they don't do that, but they are outside much more than we are with nature. And they bicycle and cycle and think about it, they shop almost every day or not more than every other day. So, they are walking to the grocery store, whereas we usually drive. So it's not just that they have these leisurely meals and how they eat. And they're connected to their family in an intimate way.
Yeah.
They shop together, they cook together, they eat together, and they clean up together. It's not like one person slaving over a stove in the kitchen. It's very different from that. And much of their social life is spent around food. It's shopping, cooking, eating, cleaning up, and then they go to work. I really enjoyed so and so there's a social part, there's the activity part, there's outside, there's leisurely eating, and I think they're generally less stressed. They have much lower rates of depression and anxiety than we do.
Yeah, the whole shopping kitchen thing is very different. The European kitchens are so small. You're not doing a trip to Costco and getting mass sizes of everything. It's just quite frequent, small amounts, whatever is freshest, and that's what you're using. And there's not much room to store things afterward.
You're absolutely right.
And the social connections were a big thing as well. I remember being out in the evening, which was often back home past my bedtime, but that was when that's when everyone came out. Things didn't even start until later in the evening, and then the whole town would come out and be together.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of, okay, I get home by 9 so I can read and go to bed by 10. The restaurants are just getting busy around 8:30 to 9:30 to 10, and then they go for this half hour to hour stroll afterwards. I mean, they're up much later. I think they're out and about in a ways that we're not. So yeah, I think your observations are right on. They still resonate in my mind when I think about it.
And this is funny. I don't really understand this point, but I've read too about, yes, it's the diet, but also, like we mentioned, the social interactions, physical activity, but also sleep quality is important. Now, but they're up so late. So are they sleeping later, or is it also the siesta, or how does that pan out?
They typically don't start work till 9, sometimes 10. I mean, there's a few jobs, like the baker who's up at 3 or 4 every morning.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, most people, I think they go to bed at 11 or 12. They don't get to work till 9 or 10. And they often, there's this idea of take a 30-minute nap in the afternoon. That's pretty common. So I think they make up for their sleep in other ways.
And I've heard that the midday napping doesn't really have negative effects upon the sleep at night. So that makes sense then. That's probably where that gap is being filled in.
And I still think they're probably getting 7 hours of sleep a night. So I think 7's probably, for most people, is plenty. It's not so much, as it's not so much how long we sleep, it's the quality of our sleep. And I think they have good quality sleep. They go to bed after having been out for a walk in the evening and feeling good and social interaction. And I think, and they're less stressed. I think there's many reasons they sleep better.
That makes a lot of sense. Over this last season you had, what were some of the, memorable experiences or some of the big insights you picked up? What were some things that have stuck with you from this last trip?
Well, part of it was, why did the Spanish why are they the longest lived country in Europe? And I think it's the food they eat, it's how they eat, it's their socialization, those ingredients. I think that's all a big part. And, I noticed the French were so slim. That was one of my observations in France. If someone was really overweight, really like obese, if I walked up behind them and followed them, they were most likely like a foreigner, either Northern European or from the US or something. They weren't typically French. So yes, the French have a few people who are overweight, but it's a really small percentage compared to Europe. So, and it's a large part about the same things that make the Spanish live longer. The foods they eat, and they have really strong portion control. They don't tend to overeat, and they only eat at mealtime. That's another thing, especially in France, is that you don't snack. You don't eat in the refrigerator or at a cabinet. You only eat when you're sitting at a table, generally with other people. We can learn a lot from that.
Yeah. A big part of our food culture is just that our food manufacturers want to keep showing a profit year after year, and they've already more than met our food needs. So you're right. We've talked about the fourth meal, the evening meal and all the snacking, and that's one of the big differences.
Yeah, it's like up to 25-30% of our calories come outside of mealtime. And that's a lot. You're right. That is like a fourth meal, right? You said it right there, tons of extra food.
And if you look at just the overall level of how processed food is, or the quality of food, it's always the worst at the snacks. And people are always eating things that are just, generally less quality.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up quality because, over and over and over again, when we went to the market, we were quite surprised with how good the quality of their food is. And if it didn't look right, nobody would buy it. So it had to be local, fresh, imperfect. They don't really care if their tomatoes are totally round and red and globe-like we seem to be fixing to buy. But they do care that the quality is good and their seafood is like super fresh. And it's because they buy so much local produce and products, they're less expensive. They don't ship things like we would, if I go to the grocery store here, I live in Florida. I would say more than half of what I buy probably comes from California, and another quarter comes from overseas. They don't have shipping expenses. One thing they don't have is our variety. When I go to the grocery store here, you can get anything from almost the whole planet.
Right.
Any cuisine stuff. They don't have that. They have their local, regional food. And if you want something else, it's really not available. So it really does keep costs down when you've got a smaller, they're eating what's local, what's seasonal, and it's fresh, it's delicious. It's about a third to half less expensive. It's pretty amazing.
That was shocking about the produce. I remember being in a lot of the shops with you, and how many stores were just for produce. They had kind of small little markets that were just selling fruits and vegetables. And then the pricing of that, it was per kilo. But
well, I remember we'd have like this huge bag of groceries with you and Kieran. It'd be like $6. You were like, how is that possible?
And then also it's kind of funny buying produce, how there was once or twice where I went to like grab things, start filling up bags, and you almost get your hand slapped for that.
You have to have permission to touch their stuff.
Well, generally what we found was that, they would have someone there who would bag that up. You would tell them what you wanted, and they would pick out the ideal ones for you and bag it up and weigh that. And
they were like, are you eating it now, this evening, or tomorrow? It would never occur to them that you might be shopping for next week. And they would pick out the right pieces based on when you were going to eat it.
And then tell you how to use that, and we would just exactly follow the directions. And that was really incredible.
Yeah, and I got a ton of recipes just shopping. I would basically say, how would you prepare this? And, they're so opinionated about their recipes. And it's not just the people selling the food in the market. They have such incredible food knowledge and culture. You could talk to someone who's pumping gas at the gas station or a taxi driver, and if you ask about a local dish, they know exactly how they make it, what ingredients they buy, how it's prepared. They can talk about it endlessly. It's pretty amazing, the food knowledge that the average person in the street has.
We'll be right back after word from Integrative Health.
We hope you are enjoying this episode of Medical Myths, Legends, and Fairy Tales. This is Dr. Turner at Integrative Healthcare. So often we hear from our new patients that their primary care physician has told them that their thyroid and hormone levels are fine, and they should not worry. Yet the patients still have symptoms of severe fatigue, thinning hair, and weight issues. Unfortunately, this is too common with thyroid care. The good news is we can help, and there is hope. The doctors at Integrative Health, including myself, specialize in naturally treating thyroid, hormone, and adrenal issues. We would love to get you started on the path to ideal health. From the comfort of your own home, you can get treatment with one of the doctors at Integrative Health via telemedicine. Go to integrativehealthcare.com to become a new patient today. Use code PODCAST20 for 20% off your new patient visit. Again, that is integrativehealthcare.com, and use code PODCAST20. Get back on the road to thriving.
And now, back for more medical myths, legends, and fairy tales. I wonder about, we see the crisis now showing up amongst the younger generation in Greece and other European countries too. And it really is there's a bit of a conundrum behind it, because I don't know, there's some obvious tight tie to affluence, but yet in the US, the issues of obesity are worse at the lower part of the socioeconomic spectrum. So it's almost like part of the crisis emerges when someone can afford and has the options to get things that, can, that change their satiety, that change the food reward mechanisms. But then there's a point at where if someone has enough options, they can work around that. But it's almost like people start to gain weight when they can afford to. Like, that's the threshold. I don't know what are your thoughts about that?
Well, yeah, it is more expensive to go and eat processed, even, fast food in Europe than it is to just go to the local vegetable market. You're right. That's for sure. But, I think all classes in Europe, it's really about the choices they make, and have they been seduced by this American lifestyle, think they see
Yeah.
fast food in our fast food chains that are over there as, American. Sometimes that's cool to them, but I wish they would, emulate other things that are American besides a fast food restaurant.
Right. Looking back here, for example, I've seen data tracking food as a percent portion of the monthly budget. And across the board, food is now a much smaller part of the budget than it ever was before. Growing up, I just remember that we were poor anyway, but my parents were always just so cautious and deliberate about what they would get and how to use leftovers and how to stretch it out. And now I think the average families, they don't have to put as much thought or effort into that.
I mean, eating local fresh produce can be, it's not cheap. I mean, it's not like it is in Europe, let's face it. Especially if you're looking, organic things are getting better and we can find more organic, and not everything needs to be organic, but I think it's nice when it is. And so there is a cost to that, but the cost of being sick and having low productivity is so enormous to me, it just outsounds it.
Yeah.
And other things, though, like beans and nuts are pretty cheap.
Oh, heck yeah.
And frozen fruit and vegetables. I mean, I don't have any problem. I don't know about you, but I'm totally fine with people eating frozen fruits and vegetables. They're a lot less expensive.
Oh, I love them.
And they have, to me, had almost the same nutritional value. So if you're on a budget, I mean, absolutely, you can eat, frozen fruit and vegetables and more beans, and you can still use dried spices and herbs. So there's certainly a way to get around and do this without breaking it.
Another misconception people often have as a barrier is that they have to be world-renowned chefs to do this adequately. And, I've seen you and I've seen others make phenomenal dishes, but at the same time, with just good ingredients and some basic skills, you can do really well. I mean, would you agree?
Oh, you are so right, Alan, because when you think about Mediterranean food, I mean, one of the reasons it's so popular and it's so easy to follow is the meals are easy to make. They're not elaborate with, dozens of ingredients, and they're not complicated. So it's like you just take like a side dish with some vegetable. I mean, you're basically going to heat up some extra virgin olive oil in a pan. And I've read your blog, so I know you're focused on getting real extra virgin, not being, scammed. You have to find the real stuff, and you've done a good. I read your blog on that. I thought it was quite good. And so you're heating a pan, and you don't just medium heat, not high. You add you add some greens to it, whether it's broccoli, green beans, Swiss chard, spinach, doesn't matter. You add some garlic, a little lemon juice, and maybe a little lemon rind with the lemon, from the lemon. And that's it. It's really simple, and it's ultra delicious when you cook that way. It doesn't take time. It doesn't take anything fancy. Just the kind of theme of olive oil, garlic, lemon, and you're set. And good, as you said, good ingredients.
Something I'll mention this again towards the end, and we'll get a link up on the show notes, but when this comes out, this will be before your book is available. And for those that do pre-order the book, we've got a series of cooking classes that you put together, a series of cooking classes that a physician, a chef, a world traveler has made. And that's available for free for those who pre-order the book. Can you tell us about the classes a bit?
Well, I wanted to try to make this easy for folks. I was trying to think, okay, what would be some of my best tips that I could share that would help someone get started? So what things to put in their pantry, so a pantry list and a kitchen tool list, to have these tools, and then to just cook some simple, easy meals that take 10, 15, up to 20 minutes to prepare. And what are the tricks to make it delicious, more healthful, but still simple? And that's really what was behind this is, how do you learn to be, you don't have to be a master chef, but, almost everyone in Europe cooks. And I think all of us could learn some basic cooking skills. It would go a long ways. And that's what these cooking classes are all about. How to make it easy to make delicious food that your family and friends will love and nourishes your heart, brain, and soul.
And those of you listening, I'm thinking that you're gonna be in a couple of categories. So one group that's gonna be many people are those that don't feel confident doing things in the kitchen. And it's so easy. I promise this will be really helpful for you. Stephen will walk you right through this, and he's just phenomenal at explaining things and knowing what it takes to overcome the concerns and the doubt. Another group, and I've fallen in this group sometimes, is those who like to cook and often do things that are rather elaborate. And sometimes, I don't know if you'll almost put off by doing so just because they've attached a lot of complexity to it. And that group, I think, could be really well served by this too, because it doesn't have to be hard. It can be really straightforward. And this will be, I know this will be really good training for you all.
Yeah, it was very informative. Like sometimes I'd be in the market and I would be, buying something and they would, the lady would say, "Oh, the sole is so fresh today." And I'd say, "How do you cook it?" And she would say, "Well, when the sole is this good, I'm going to put it in a saute pan at just medium low heat with some olive oil and use a little salt and pepper. And that's it. Don't add anything else. You'll ruin it. It's so good. Simple." And I would say, "How about just a tiny bit of time?" "Okay, a little bit of time, but that's it, really, no more." Don't add any more. I mean, that was very informative. So, think about how easy can we make it and it still tastes fantastic. That's kind of the trick.
I remember a recipe Kieran got when we were in Capri, that there was a market that we would walk to that was about a couple of blocks from where our place we were staying was, and they had these tomatoes looked quite different, but they were phenomenal. And the gentleman who was at the store selected some for us, and I think Kieran did ask, but he told her, he said, "Look, here's exactly how you want to serve these. You slice them, drizzle on a little olive oil and a pinch or two of salt, and that's your side dish. That's all you do." and it was the most incredible side dish.
Yeah, I think I also have that tendency to try to make things too complicated sometimes, but it doesn't really have to.
So someone who's been on a healthier diet in general, they've been thinking about things, they want to switch over. What are the first couple steps you think are most useful for them?
Shopping. I mean, what do you have in your pantry? I think that is absolutely essential, to be able to make good choices day in and day out. If we don't have good choices, most of us aren't going to make them. So, it's on a regular basis, being able to stock a pantry so we can whip something up easily. When someone pops in, comes over, we have something. I think that is a really key, important thing. And shopping more often and looking for more fresh local food products, I think really helps because it improves the quality quite a bit.
So at home, what's your typical ritual as far as some things you get every so often, some things you do more frequently? How do you typically set up your shopping schedules?
Well,
now that you're not on the boat again.
I have two lives, half the year on the boat and half the year at home. So, and they're very different because at home I have a big, huge kitchen. On the boat, I have a little tiny kitchen. So at home, but I also have a garden. And so I can go out and pick herbs and spices, just on my windowsill. They're growing out. I can just pop the window open and collect some. So I think having herbs and spices in your garden, or on your windowsill, is it really make a huge benefit to making cooking easy instead of, because that's one of the harder things to buy and store, and they can be expensive. So growing some herbs and spices would be one of my biggest tips to make delicious, easy cooking more available to people.
And it really does take cooking. Even if you want to go to Whole Foods or wherever you go, nothing that you get pre-made ends up being the same. And when you get the basic skills down, it takes so little time. And yeah, nothing else is the same as that. There's just no replacement for that.
And even eating out in restaurants, I learned a lot on how to order in a restaurant. It's get a salad with Italian dressing and order a vegetable, side plate or, a big vegetable side plate. And probably we can Nicole and I can get one entree and split it. It'll be plenty. And, asking for fruit for dessert. I mean, it's really easy to order, and it actually usually saves you money because, a big part of your dinner expenses for two people is having two entrees. So I think we could save money and eat better if we ate, even when we're outside the home eating out, eat more wisely.
That's great. And I'm assuming that you talk a bit in the book about ideas on when you're on the go and traveling and whatnot. And
Well, part of it is finding where to eat. It's like looking for, I think here in the U.S., to me, it is looking for some Mediterranean restaurants. It's looking for a Spanish place or a Greek restaurant or an Italian place, and just what I said, making sure you order an appetizer, that you get a salad, you get a vegetable side dish, and those are really, I think that's typical in Europe, but it's not so typical here, and I think it makes the whole ordering experience more fun, less costly, and a lot better for our health too.
this is great stuff. I'm really excited to share this, everyone. So I just want to recap. This is about the new book, The Mediterranean Method. And those of you who are hearing this, I'll keep this recording around and keep it available. Those who are hearing it before the publication date, which is December 31st, 2019, you can pre-order the book. There'll be a link. You can go to Stephen's website for that. You can pre-order the book and you can get this cooking class from him just as a thank you for that, which highly recommend. If you're hearing it outside that window, I'll make sure there's some links by which you can still get some guides for stocking your pantry and some shopping guidelines. They'll still be available, but huge positive resource that I'll highly recommend everyone to take a look at. Dr. Masley, any closing words of clinical experience you've seen with the diet, memorable patient stories, anything along those lines for us? Or
I've just had amazing results using this in my clinic. It's made it easier for people to make changes by asking them to eat more Mediterranean food, cooked mostly with extra virgin olive oil, to eat more vegetable fruits, beans and nuts, have some seafood, keep poultry or meat portions if you eat them, smaller, like 3 to 5 ounces instead of a huge portion. It's never been difficult when I've suggested that to people, and the results have been amazing. In my clinic, we documented that people were able to shrink their artery plaque, lose weight, improve their cognitive performance, their mental brain processing speed. So, and we published that. The results have really been amazing. So, there was like one woman who came in. She had brain fog. She was 40 pounds overweight, and she, mostly ate typical American processed food. And it wasn't that hard to get her to make changes and focus on this style of eating. And over a year, she lost 40 pounds. She felt fantastic. It transformed her life. So I think, and I've got hundreds of stories like that. But I think the key is it's so doable, and it's not hard. It's not complicated. And you get to eat delicious food at the same time. So, to me, it's kind of a win-win situation.
Well, I just want the listeners to know, too, that the work you've done with your patients is quite different. Dr. Masley has very closely monitored cognitive performance. He's quantified these sorts of things. He's taken a close look at their endothelial function. He's closely looked at their cardiovascular health, their physical performance, and he's tracked this and put good numbers on large groups of people. So when he's saying these things occur, you might hear those things said by others, but not necessarily with the same level of analysis or data behind that. So these are real things he's talking about.
Yeah, I'm really, excited to think that we helped hundreds of people shrink their artery plaque by more than 10%. We had hundreds of patients who increased their brain processing speed by more than 25%. Most of our average patients shrunk their plaque, lost weight, improved all their, cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar profile. That was just the average response to following that recommendation. And I'm proud of it. And, but I know you are too. From your clinic, you get similar results. So, this isn't a foreign concept to you like it might be for someone who's used to going to a typical healthcare provider.
So Mediterranean Method, pick it up now. Pre-order if you can. If not, it's still good to pick up. We've got some great bonuses that Dr. Masley's put together for you, and highly recommended. So, Dr. Masley, thank you so much for your time. Good to get to hang out.
Oh, always wonderful to hang out with you.
All right, listeners, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you again real soon. Take great care. Bye-bye. Hey, Dr. Christensen here. Thanks so much for joining me for another episode. Is there a topic you'd like me to cover? I'd love to hear from you. Just go to Dr. Alan Christensen on Facebook or Instagram, write your question, and use the hashtag #MedicalMyths. Did you find this show helpful? If so, please take a minute and leave us a rating on iTunes so that others can know. Thanks much, and I'll be back with you real soon. Bye-bye.